Time for the weekly update, and I'm going to start off here with Tesla. And Tesla just did kind of exactly what it was expected to do, really. So, just here on the daily chart, let's just break it down, right? So, we'll break it down from maybe last Wednesday, it was the low. Then it got started building on a base on top of the baseline right here, and then it was going towards one resistance level at a time. Then it blasted through, got to the cloud. That was a confirmation to go to the top of the cloud, which it did, and got rejected. It did open the day above, but it just sent it straight back down. And it looks like it's not done falling yet because it kind of wants to go maybe back to the 208 down there, right? 208.50 on the daily chart. So I think the daily chart kind of said it all for everything. You didn't even need to look at any other time frame because the daily chart said everything. And then when you put on the SMAs there too, you can see that the reason why price stopped there back last Wednesday was because of the 200-day moving average, and then price slowly but surely worked its way on top of everything, and therefore now it lost that support, right? It lost all the support, and it went back down, and I think maybe even a retest of that 208, maybe even a retest of the 202 is likely, right? So we'll see. Going to the weekly chart here, we'll just put on the weekly chart for Tesla. And we can see an even clearer picture too. Like if you wanted to add the weekly chart as a confluence to the daily chart, you can see that price simply just opened the week in the cloud, right? It opened right here around 2:15:26, right? Then what I said, if you remember on Monday or Tuesday during my live stream, I said now that Tesla has opened in the cloud, it has free range to do whatever it wants within the cloud, right? You can go down the cloud down to the 205. It can go up to the 220s, and it even wicked above to the 200 week moving average at 234. So it did exactly that. It went in, it took advantage of almost the whole range, except didn't really take advantage of the lower range, but next week it could, right? And when on the daily chart, I did mention that 202 level, right? Well, guess what? Next week's candle is going to be in here. Where does the low end range of that candle sit? Well, it sits right there around 202, right? The bottom of that cloud sits around 202 for next week, and the top still sits up there around 225, 226. And that's going to be your range for next week, probably as well, right? And even a possible wick below back towards that 198 could be possible too. But essentially, this is still not a bad situation, right? This is basically a breakout into the cloud, and it's just backtesting support. Like previous resistance right here, you can see for a while, like all of this was resistance for a while. These moving averages specifically, right? The 50 week and the 100 week, and even the baseline, they were resistance levels for a while, but now they're looking like support. So, could next week go back down and test that 208, 207, 206, even the 202? Yeah, because when you go back to the daily chart, you can see that that becomes a possibility with the baseline here at 208 and the 200 week down there at 202, and even that 100-day moving average, sorry, 200-day and 100-day moving average there, which actually coincides with that 309 halfway fib between the 382 and the 236, which is the 198.43 level, right? So that is the range, right? That's the reality. So was it obvious that this is going to get rejected? No, we were all hoping that it's going to break that resistance and continue higher. But the daily chart said it all. It was just too much resistance above, and it just needed to go back to test support. So is anything broken technically with Tesla? No, it's not. It's just doing exactly what happens when resistance cannot get broken. It's going back to test the support. And then on the way down, it just started collecting all those stop losses and pushing it further and further. And now it just closed a little bit above the baseline. So a retest of that at a minimum would probably be necessary next week, right? So we can see that or a little bit lower. But again, it's just doing exactly what it should be doing. And I'll even go to the log scale, or sorry, the linear scale again right here. And there's even more confirmation on the weekly chart that price did go, in fact, and touch the top of the angle, the blue angle that I've been talking about for a while, right? It was a resistance, resistance, still is a resistance, right? and it closed right back a little bit below the arc. And I think that arc is going to be kind of like a magnet for price, where price wants to maybe even trickle down weeks to come before that October event, right? And then maybe by then it can go higher. So possibly we can see that just a trickle down the arc down there, possibly until maybe October. And that by that point, maybe it'll still be around the 205s, right? We'll see. We'll see what happens, but just I'm going to pay attention to these levels a lot. And if one day we do get a weekly candle close back above that angle, then I'll get more excited. But until then, we're just going to be in that range that I specified. And even going back to that linear scale, sorry, the log scale GAN right here, this log scale GAN is essentially also a target right here, right around 201, 202, right? So there's a lot of confluence that possibly price broke out of that range and now it wants to backtest those lower levels. But this is not a bearish setup. You can see that it was a support here, then a resistance here, and then a support, and then a resistance. And now it's trying to be a support level again, this blue level. So this blue level is important to hold, and I think it's very possible to continue to hold because it's looking like this arc already held as a support, right? So the same thing can happen to this blue level, and once we get like a confirmation bullish engulfing candle, then I think it'll be ready to go much, much higher. But again, just going back to that original chart here, there's really nothing to worry about. We'll go to the weekly chart. Nothing to worry about. We'll even go to the monthly chart here and still look at this, and it's still above the baseline. It's still above the conversion line on the monthly chart. And if you guys need a reminder, the last time it really was above both when they were this close together on the top side was like way back here, guys. It was way back here before it really broke out. So again, the way price closed the month last month, it's setting up to be a very bullish future for uh, Tesla. And you can see another confluence up here, the 50-month moving average right there, why price couldn't break free, right? There's so many things that were resistance that once it couldn't break above it, it had to get pushed lower, and that's exactly what it did. But there's still 24 days in this month, and it still can close back in the cloud, and it still can even go back down to these lower levels to retest them and go higher by the end of the month. So not all is lost. I think it's just doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. So we'll just keep an eye on those levels going into next week. And next is Palantir. Palantir, there's really nothing much to report with this one. And simply because all it did is it held that 618 Fibonacci, right? This one right here, the 618 Fibonacci level, it held it perfectly. It did wick below, but it held. And it did close a little bit below that angle there, but no harm, no foul. Like all it did is go up and get rejected by this resistance, and then it came back down to the support around 30.08, and that is exactly where support is. So if that level holds, then there's really no need to come back down to these $27 levels. So that's going to be the number that we're going to watch for the rest of the week, of next week and the weeks to come. Just make sure that 618 holds on weekly candle closes, right? There's really not much else to report with this one because it did exactly what it was supposed to do and support held. So one of the few stocks that support actually held. So that's it. Just 30.08. That's the level going into the weeks to come. Just keep closing candles above that, and then it can build a base and continue higher.